So welcome to the podcast today with Reyes Group, and today I'd love to welcome our guest Malika Malik, who is an generative AI specialist. Currently she works at Google. She's worked previously at Microsoft and many other places as well. And she is going to share her story today about what she does currently in tech, but also a little bit about her life as well and how she grew up and her background. So today we're just going to delve into the world of everything artificial intelligence, find out a little bit more about how that works, and also get to know you a little bit more as well, Malika.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm quite excited.
Great. I'm so pleased that we managed to get you on the show today. So the burning question that everybody's got is, I guess, what's going to happen in 2024? Where's this crystal ball?
Yes. Okay. So, when we were discovering, generative AI, in the last 2 years, a big hype back in 2023, and I think the biggest question was, will the hype last in 2024, right? And the answer is that it will. But what you're going to see in the year of 2024 is the actualization, a lot of prototypes that you saw back in 2023, right? And the reason why this hype will be addressed in 2024 is because this is the first time we're actually seeing AI being interacted with people it didn't interact with. Right. So back in, 10 years, if you see the landscape, we always thought AI is this, capability which will change the world, which it will, in the ways that we've discussed. But for the first time, you're actually seeing now humans who had nothing to do with AI are able to interact with artificial intelligence. So you're actually able to see the whole aspect of democratizing of the usage of AI. And what you're going to see in 2024 is a lot of these use cases being moved into production. So you'll see a lot of the interaction with AI and generative AI being very seamless, right? So you'll not be able to see much differentiation between two. The other aspect which you will see is last year was a lot of focus on unstructured data, right? So your text, videos, images, etc. This year, we're going to actually see a lot of use cases where you can interact with structured data. So think about your data warehouse, think about your databases. How do you actually bring that aspect of data, which is huge for enterprise, and being able to interact it in a natural language, right?
Got it.
So tapping on that structured data and democratizing it for your enterprise is going to be a huge application that you will see. The other aspect, which I'm actually most excited about, is this was something I used to say back in 2019, and now this applies in 2024, which was 70 to 80% of your AI use cases never made to production, right? Because they were not designed for productionization. So when you think about productionizing an AI solution, it's about monitoring it, evaluating it, being able to, improve your model over time, being able to take that feedback. How do you actually take those concepts and that framework of MLOps and bring that to Gen AI so you can productionize these solutions better?
Right.
So the other key area, which is going to be a huge focus for 2024, is building your LLM ops, which is MLOps for large language models. So getting your framework ready and set to productionize these LLM solutions.
Yeah, because I gather right now there's very sort of limited amount of tweaks that you can apply to it. Nobody's invented the buttons to twiddle, basically, the kind of, the minutiae of the thing, basically, so that you can tweak it a certain way. You can, of course, do things like temperature and all those small changes, but
so
actually getting underneath the hood, I think is what people want to play with, really.
I think more so around once you have done the tuning, right? So there are multiple ways you can tune a large language model today, right? Whether it is the ones that you've described, there are other techniques like parameter efficient tuning, fine tuning, being able to retrain a large language models, but the amount of time, effort, and skill is very different.
Exactly,
right?
They're clunky, basically, right?
Exactly, but I think the challenge that we're seeing is all of these LLM prototypes now sit in someone's laptop. The same problem we had back in 2019, which had no insights into how do we actually productionize this for a large enterprise and being able to maintain it. Because maintaining an LLM has its own different challenges, right? Here, these models are probabilistic in nature, right? So they have the probability to chunk out the next token, which is, for a layman term, similar to what a word would be, right? So because of their probabilistic nature, the maintainability of these large language models is going to be very different from what we did with traditional ML. So how do you actually design the models? Think of a scenario. You have a use case. You take an LLM. You tweak it in the terminologies that you used, and you push it out for prod. Now, how do you actually bring in the next model, which is better than the model that's already in prod? What kind of evaluations are you going to run to see, is my new model better than the old model? So I can promote the new model to the old model.
Yes.
So how do you actually evaluate that? How are you taking the feedback from your customers who are currently playing with it and being able to actually take that feedback and improve the model? How are you monitoring the drift, if there are any drifts in the model that's already in prod? So all of these are fairly complex tasks. This was already a very complex problem to solve for machine learning, so for traditional AI. But being able to then augment it for LLMs is another hard challenge. So what we're going to see this year is a lot of productionizing your large language models, being able to set those foundations, and getting your team ready to productionize those prototypes, which is great and looks amazing. But what's the actual value for the enterprise as they start giving it and being able to kind of like give it to their customers?
Yeah. Users, definitely. I mean, and the users will vote with their feet, because I would imagine that perhaps you might even release a new model and it doesn't work as well as the old one did previously. I think there was some pushback a little bit with GPT-4, wasn't there, and like the old version of ChatGPT. So yeah, I think definitely these things will happen as a natural way of products being released anyway. I think over time, what will probably happen is that as businesses find that their models are capable of one thing, do you think that they will then start to increase the modality of those models as well to accept in other avenues? Other inputs, should we say?
Yeah. 100%. So every model and again, speaking of largely for the universe, every company, as they start launching their own large language models, you will see improvements, right? So the improvement that you see from, a Palm model, the first version to the second version, there will be improvements. Now, what are those improvements? The improvements will be in your token size. Improvements will be in your precision for the use cases that you're working on. But the other aspect that you will see is the modality that you talked about. So now, instead of just putting the inputs as text, how can I actually put the input is an image or a video? So you're able to actually now expand a text LLM to have multimodalities, so images, videos, text, and able to digest all of that information, but the output still remains to be a text or an image, right?
And don't forget audio as well, because
exactly, 100%. So, but what you'll actually find is not every large language model is the right model. Right, so the largest is not the better in the ecosystem of Gen AI.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if you have a use case which is completely on images, do you really need the multimodality? Probably not. What you need is a specialized large language models which is tuned for images only.
Right.
Or let me give you another example. If your use case is just on summarization, right? Do you really need a 2 billion parameter model to be doing summarization? Probably not. From a cost effective versus performance perspective, in that graph, if you see, maybe not the right use case.
Sure.
So I think what's really important is to understand that based on the use case that you are working on, which is that right LLM to look into, right? What are the benefits, the pros and the cons? What is it best known for? And being able to kind of use the ones that is best is important. Like, I'll give you an example. In Google, we've launched a technique which is called distillation. So the idea is that you have your teacher model, which is this large LLM, in the billions of parameters, is able to perform XYZ tasks. And then you have something called a student model. So what you're doing is you're actually transferring the learning of a large teacher model to a student model. And the student model is tuned for the use case that you're developing. And it's not as big as your teacher model. But what you're doing is you're able to actually meet that specific task you want to do.
It's a specialist model.
And you're able to actually reduce the cost because now you're not really dealing with a large model, right?
Got it.
So the cost effectiveness versus the performance is going to be an important trade-off balance
That's
that
actually
you have to kind of like deal with.
That's actually very, very smart. I mean, it's something that, you when we anthropomorphize these things, that's exactly kind of like the way how the world would work ordinarily. You'd go to med school, you'd be a general practitioner, but then all of a sudden you're a specialist in a specific way, like you're a consultant for hand or eyes or etc. But that is your area of specialty, and your vocab, the way how you say things, is all distilled down to those specific areas.
And from a compute perspective as well, right? Like now, you're actually reducing the amount of compute that's required for a student model versus what is needed for a teacher model. So you're able to save costs, but there's also an aspect of sustainability that we need to think about. That as you're designing these large generative AI models and these workflows, you're going to be using a sustainable, an enormous amount of compute backing these large language models. So how do you actually reduce it while being able to maintain the performance is going to be another aspect to focus on. So a lot of the research is focused now on being able to address some of these concerns that we've discussed, but at the same time being able to give the right models to the developers, data scientists, so that they can actually start implementing it in their workflows today.
Right. It's all sounding very, very thought out now, and I think before it was just a case of rushing to the market really to try and get things out there and see what would happen in the hands of real everyday users. But now there's a lot more kind of thoughtful aspects to what is being pushed out. So we talked about tech, right? Just completely to pull it back, let's start from the ground about you. How did you get into this tech world, and actually tell me a little bit about your background, growing up. You're obviously not from the UK, so tell me where you're from.
So I'm from India, and I was born and raised in India. I spent majority of my schooling, my undergraduate, all in India. So my parents, it's actually quite interesting. So my dad was in the army, and my two generations were in the Indian Army and British Army. And everybody in my family had to join the services, which is either Army, Air Force, or Navy. And I was petrified. And
you didn't want to join.
I didn't want to join, and I had this huge pressure of being able to kind of take forward this legacy, which, while I respect, I felt I was not the right person to take it forward. And I was really good in mathematics. I was, the bright student that my parents always wanted. I was the studious kid. So, everything that an Indian parent would want, like I had all of that in me. And I had to fight with my parents to eventually have that discussion that, look, guys, I am not going to be taking, your dream of joining the services, but I'm going to serve my country back in my own way. So I did my undergraduate in bachelor's in statistics. So that was actually quite important for me to set my foundations for statistics and mathematics, right? Back in those days when I was doing my bachelor's, there was not much focus on AI. Like, we had the murmurs that data science is going to be quite important, but there weren't real kind of opportunities back in those days for data science. So I worked in India as a data scientist in a consultancy called KPMG. which I really enjoyed. Part of my job was a bunch of these Excel sheets and being able to kind of analyze those different Excel sheets and, build reports and trends and share that with the team, which eventually would go into some report that I had never seen. So while I loved my job, I wasn't being able to see the actual end product of it and the real, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And all of those questions that kind of come up eventually.
Did you want to see what the
Yes,
end
so
product was?
I'm always the kind of person which, if I understand what the end state is, my attitude is, I'll do anything and everything to make it happen, right?
Got
I am not the kind of person who works well with, okay, do this and this is where your job is.
Right.
I would like to know, what is the end state? How does it impact the customer? And being able to actually understand, okay, is the customer enjoying the product that they're interacting with, which the team has built? And there are a lot of, like you run a company, so you know this. There's so many hurdles and struggles that happen when you're running, right? Every day is solving a fire. And I love that and I enjoy that. So while I was in India doing my data science job, my parents were coming to that course of retirement. Right. So they were at a point where they're going to retire from the Indian Army. And my dad always had this vision of starting his own school.
Right.
And he wanted to find his purpose eventually after serving the country for 30 years, which surprisingly he felt he didn't, do enough. And in India, we have a certain section of the community that does not have access to education. And while there are government schools, they aren't really the best. So for him, he wanted to set up a foundation where he could be able to give access to quality education and a holistic education and holistic development to students in India of a certain section. And that was his mission. So I started working very closely with him, and we established something called the olive green. Olive green is the color of a uniform of an Indian Army personnel.
Right.
And he set up his first school, and that was one of the things me and my dad did together. It was a great bonding exercise for me as well, because because dad was always away, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
for me to kind of know my dad better was through this. It's actually one of the impact stories that I've seen my family, build and achieve. And it wasn't a hard one. It wasn't an easy one, right? Because COVID happened, right?
Yeah.
So much went wrong during those 2 to 3 years. I mean, India dealt with COVID very differently from what we saw in the UK. Being able to kind of still continue the schooling, right? Like these kids don't have laptops that they can have virtual classes.
Yeah.
So how do you actually continue school despite not being able to kind of bring them all to your campus? So, innovation and technology helped then, and we figured out ways to kind of achieve that. But that was what my journey in India was.
Right.
And through that time of setting up the foundation, I came across London School of Economics, and London School of Economics was starting their first batch for masters in data science back in 2016.
Got it. Okay.
And they were looking for the first 13 students. And while LSE was great, I always had a dream to go to Oxford.
Right.
And I was extremely confident about my application and scores and whatnot. And I put in the application, and that was the only college I applied to, which was Oxford. And I didn't get in. It wasn't well taken by me.
Yeah.
And
is it because, and I just coming back to it, right? Because I know when you're really high achieving and then you get a setback, it feels like it's a really personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about that, because there will be people watching this kind of who are doing really, really well. They're always doing well. And then they get a hurdle. Yeah. Something that's an obstacle.
Yeah. I actually think it was because I never saw failure. And I wish I had seen failure before to be able to handle that.
Right.
And now when I see failure, which trust me, it's a lot more than what I saw and I should see. I'm able to handle it a lot better now.
Good.
And sometimes it's not about how much hard work you put in.
No.
It's about destiny, and I'm glad it didn't happen, because that course was very much research focused, which, while I love, was probably not something I would have enjoyed eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So here I was, didn't get into Oxford, and then applied to LSE and got in, and came here. And
What year was this? Remind me.
so that was 2017.
2017. Okay.
Yes, 2017 is when I did my master's, and it was the hardest year of my life.
Right.
Because,
and you did it over 1 year.
yes.
Okay.
Not 1 year, I think 9 months.
All right.
So kind of squeezed in all of my classes. I think I worked the hardest in 2017 because I was doing like internships. LSE is a very competitive school to be in. You
Yeah.
have the best of breed come in, and a course like data science is extremely hard to be doing really well. And here I was kind of like getting 90%. And LSE doesn't operate like that, right? LSE, like if you get 70%, you've done very well in your life.
That's like a 90% to everybody.
Yes. So for me, it was a bit of it was also a cultural difference, right? Here you were in a country which, I had never been to. You were all by yourself, being
Yeah.
able to figure out.
And that was the first time you were on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And being able to figure out, laundry, like, I think life in India was, and I would talk about it because I'm sure a lot of people face this. Life in India was very comfortable.
Yeah.
Beyond all of the domestic, household chores that you have to do, I think being able to figure out, the whole job process is quite hard because you only get 2 to 3 months to find a job before your visa expires and you have to go back to India.
Right.
So I was doing I applied 200 applications on LinkedIn, possibly got rejected from everywhere because that wasn't the right way to apply.
Got it. Okay.
And the only way to apply was to actually network and being able to really understand what the team is, being able to kind of do an internship with them.
Mm-hmm.
But through the years at LSE, I had the opportunity to, to co-found the first data science society in LSE.
Really?
And
oh, wow.
that was one of the best experiences I've had because LSE, if you think about the university, right, it has the best of students that come across, from different, from economics, from statistics, from political science, and they were all interested to see how we can apply data science in their discipline.
To those fields, yeah.
So we used to run boot camps, post-doc classes, 5 to 6, free of cost for anyone to drop in and start, building solutions like using Python, being able to learn with us. And that community that we built, that was the first time I realized what's the importance of building a community and a tribe that believes in learning the same thing that you are very passionate about.
Yeah.
And because I could, discuss my passion for data science with someone who was studying political science and had a lot of textual, data they had to kind of comprehend on a daily basis, I was actually interested to see, hey, how can I apply NLP to solve that problem for you? Or for someone who's doing an MBA, if they want to understand the sentiment of their customer because of the product they're building, how do I actually apply data science to that?
And I guess it's also probably it probably gave you a really strong sense of purpose.
Yes.
Because you couldn't do it the other way around.
Exactly.
You couldn't get the political science person thinking about how they could use NLP to solve their problem.
Yeah.
But you could do it as an NLP specialist, learning about political science to use NLP to help that. If you see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So that probably gave you yeah, I can imagine. Okay.
And then while I was at LSE, did a bunch of these community building, led the society that is still running, and I'm very grateful for the students to actually take it forward. And I closed my LSE with good grades. They weren't 90%, but they were in the 70s. So my Indian parents were happy.
But that's still 90% for regular people.
No, they were like, why didn't you get that? Like, you got distinction. Like, why haven't they written first class? And I was like, be happy I didn't fail.
This is, exactly. This is like, exactly. Yeah.
So
This is like at least one Michelin star, right? So yeah.
yeah. So and it was one of the best experiences for me to be able to actually study in that institute. And I did few internships. I worked in a startup. I worked in a travel company called Expedia in the AI team. So did bunch of these startups and this different sprints as an intern. And then finally, continued with KPMG as a data scientist for another year as a full-time job.
All right. And was this? Did you go back to India to do this, or did you stay here?
So I stayed here in London, and I did my 1 year as a data scientist in KPMG, where I was playing with a lot of the AWS stack. So that was the first time I was introduced to cloud.
Right. This is 2019-ish now.
So that is 2018.
2018 still. Okay.
And while I was there, I was at an event. It's by the All Party Parliamentary Group on AI. So it's a parliamentary body which has been established to discuss all the immediate topics on AI back in 2018, which is where I met with few folks from Microsoft, and they were quite interested to be like, hey, do you wanna be part of our team? We're doing some cool stuff, and that's where I joined Microsoft as a solution architect.
Right. Okay.
So I was there for around 2.5 years. And my last role there was at Microsoft was a secondment as a product manager for their machine learning platform. So I had seen both sides of sales. So how do you actually sell Azure as a platform? How do you build solutions? But then I had the opportunity to be on the product side, to be able to actually design the platform.
Shape what it looks like. Yeah.
And it was a very interesting experience to be on the other side,
I
where
bet.
you're actually doing competitive analysis to shape, what needs to be built first, being able to spend time with customers to understand what exactly do they require on the platform, and then working closely with your engineering teams to actually build it.
Yeah.
So that was a very good experience for me. And then I joined Google after 2.5 years.
Yeah. They pried you away.
They reached out on LinkedIn.
Very good.
The polite way of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, right, you've got a really strong, solid background. Any smart institution would do something like that. And yes, and now you're a fully fledged AI expert with 2 sets of technologies under your roster of expertise, effectively. And you set a school up. And you set up you set up the data science society, beg your pardon, at LSE. So gosh, yeah. That high performing thing is definitely all over this tick, right? So what keeps you motivated, I guess, is the other thing, because is it the next thing, or is it keeping a certain level of performance, or what is it?
I think I wouldn't come here and say that I've got it all figured out. Like, I think for me, like let's talk about this year, right? 2024, it's a big year for AI. But what is it for me at this point? If you ask me, I don't know. And I'm the same person who in 2023 December, has a whole plan of like, this is what I'm going to achieve, and this is what my 2 years and this is what my 5 years are going to be like. Yeah. But I think I want to be very honest about the fact that you will not have it all figured out. And it's okay to be at a phase where you're still trying to figure out what your purpose is going to be. Yeah. I think Google as an organization, it's my dream job. I can't imagine I get paid for what I'm doing because of while I'm able to contribute extensively to my customers, I'm able to learn and be able to be part of a team which is excellent, folks in AI, right? Like, they're the best of the breed, and you be able to be a part of that room and learn is a great learning experience for me. But at the same time, I'm at that phase in my life where I'm still asking myself, is what is the end mission? What do you want to achieve in the next 2 years? And I want to circle back and go back to my 2013 2014 phase where I started the school. and the impact that I was able to make, with the school that the family and I have created.
Directly with individuals,
with
right?
the individuals, and how do I actually be able to replicate that through AI is going to be one of my key areas of focus for this year. And I've been discussing and brainstorming with my mentors around, how do I actually shape this? So I'm currently in the process of, doing two key things. The first is I'm writing a book for AI for kids. And the very idea is, we've talked extensively about upskilling your workforce, but then what about upskilling your next generation? Right?
Definitely.
And the very idea is that regardless of whether you're going to be a musician, you want to be a painter, you want to be an engineer, AI is going to be a bigger role to play in their life than it has on our life. And how do we prepare them to make sure they are AI literate and Gen AI literate, and be able to see the evolution of technology from the very start is quite important.
Yeah.
And I think what's also very significant is that the question of not having enough women in tech actually stems from them not being able to find the right role models, and this whole demystifying that AI or anything tech is not related to women, or because we've just not seen enough role models, right? Maths is good for boys, not for girls. Like, those were the kind of myths that I saw growing up. Like, when I was growing up, majority of the girls in my class, they were excellent in mathematics. But when it had to come to choosing a course in mathematics eventually to pursue it for your college, not many women did, because they always felt that engineering or a course in STEM was something that boys did. So how do you actually be able to tap on that talent when they're in their age between 10 to 15 is one of my key focus areas for this year. So
just to pull that back though a little bit, right? When I hear about the statistics and the disparities there, and I completely understand it. Some of it is structural because it has happened in the past, and therefore it cannot change immediately overnight. There is going to be a gradual phasing of it becoming more and more women over time. But do you think there is going to ever be equality in that ratio, as in 50%? Do you see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And how do we know that we've done enough?
So we've been talking about, women in tech, and there's so many different efforts that has been led across, across companies, across, outside organizations as well. But the rate at which the improvement should happen for the 50% of the population to contribute to technology, that ratio is not growing at the level it should, right? It is extremely slow. And it's not good because...
So it's the contributory effect of women as opposed to the volume of them?
So to the volume.
Okay. All right.
So you would still find yourself to be the only female in the room, and that is normal, which is not good.
Yeah. I mean, and this is obviously had lots and lots of precedent. So there was this famous photo of like all the Nobel laureate prize winners, and there was only one woman in there, and that was Marie Curie. Can you remember that one?
Yeah.
You had Einstein, you had everybody from Schrödinger. All those guys were just sat in front of a photo.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, was she exceptional? Was she the
I think there are a lot of
the something that is different from the norm, or was it that the opportunity, the lack of opportunity?
I think the opportunity now is definitely being more diversified. So the aspect that if you're an 18-year-old fresh out of college, if you want to get into a tech career, it is relatively easier for you to do now. If you're clear on that's what you want to do.
Got it.
If you're unclear on it, then you and the unclarity is because, is that really where I want to be? Then you might take a different path. But the path to entry is easy. The path, once you're at the middle stage in your corporate career, is difficult.
Right.
And that is specifically, and I've spent a lot of my time really looking into the trends here, is because the biological clock of a woman and the corporate clock of your career, they overlap. So when you get into the phase of maternity and you want to have a baby, and you will naturally take, few months off to take care of the baby when you're on the maternity break. For you to come back into the corporate culture is a lot harder. Because here, imagine last year in 6 months, so much changed in the ecosystem of tech, right? And that is very natural to happen in a tech industry. So for you to kind of naturally get into the tech industry after a 6 months break is very hard, because you have to go through so many changes. The tech has changed. What the customers are talking about is completely different. So they require more support as they think about getting back into the job.
Got it. Okay.
And then the second aspect is more of the Western challenge. And I say Western over what I've seen in Southeast Asia, is being able to leave your child to go do your job is very expensive, because you have to get the support of nanny or being able to drop the child to a preschool, and that's really expensive. And what eventually happens is, when they do the maths between, if I go and if I earn X amount of money, and I'm putting that same X amount of money to actually send my kid to a preschool and being able to give them the support they need, it's the same.
Right.
Or relatively quite similar. So should I stay at home and just take care of my kid while my husband will go and earn? Some people feel that. Whereas in Southeast Asia, I saw that to be very different, because my mother-in-law, so she was also in the army. She was a doctor in the army, and she delivered her kids, and in like 11 days, she was back at work, because we had that support system from the family to take care of, and the support of nanny and like help around is a relatively cheaper in a country like India over others.
Right.
So I felt that expense was another aspect that got many people to not join the workforce back.
Right. Okay. Well, it's not something that as a man you ever think about, because it doesn't happen to us. Let's just, to be blunt, right? But yeah, it's baked in almost, the fact that you're already, I don't want to say disadvantage, but it is a disadvantage from a career perspective, because that is kind of like a natural thing that will happen as a result. And it's multifaceted as well, because it's not just a structural thing, it's a cultural thing as well. Because I would imagine, in India and places like that, the pressure to, meet someone, get married, settle down is probably in your ear all day. When you did it,
it's getting better now, but it's definitely different from what you will see outside.
Whereas I think that kind of happens to a less extent with boys or men, should we say? But it's probably not as much as that until like you hit about 40, 50, and then afterwards, then they start throwing stuff at you.
But I think it can change once you have an equal home, in the sense that the responsibility of raising a child and responsibility of a household is not just a woman's problem. It's an equal household problem. So the husband and wife, they share the responsibilities. And not to say that disadvantage doesn't have a solution. It can have a solution, but it has to be well thought of. So the idea of being able to kind of build that support system, what I saw in Southeast Asia, being able to welcome your grandparents home so they can take care of the kids, which they happily do. So you can actually go and, pursue your career, is something that I've actually seen Indra Nui do it really, really well.
Right.
So she talks about this concept of being able to bring your village when you have to raise your child, so you can go pursue the career that you want to. And being very open and clear about that from the very start is important. And I think the second aspect is equal responsibilities for the household is another aspect, because I think women are great leaders. and they have the empathy when they enter the room.
Mm-hmm.
They have the ability to solve problems, to solve challenges, which is remarkable. But the area where we actually lose women in the workforce is around the time of, when they start a family.
Right.
So how do we actually provide them the support system so they can enter the workforce after the maternity break, and they get the support they require? Because once they've got the support, once they've upscaled, they're ready to get started.
Yeah.
But it's that initial 2 to 3 months, once you come back from maternity leave, being able to get the support, get the mentorship, get the
money.
the money.
Right.
Which is quite important.
Let's kind of not beat around the bush, because if what we're saying is true and women are like gonna be a little bit more valuable, should we say, to the output of what a company is going to be bringing, but we're going to lose them over a certain period of time. Should we not be paying them more, like have some sort of a slight differentiation there, because of the fact that we want them back into the workplace once they've had their kids?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Right?
And it helps because eventually, let's think about the tech ecosystem. If you're building a solution which is going to be used by 100% of the population, built by 50% of the population, which is all men, it's not going to be the right product.
And it's not going to cater for it. Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to build a product which is diverse, if you want to build a solution which represents the totality of the society that's going to consume it, it has to have the society representation in the room that's building it.
So we've had it backward all these years.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. Okay. So, we've talked about like how, what it is you're doing and what's motivated you so far. I want to talk to you a little bit about also, like, tell me a little bit more than just from the point that you started at with your MBA. Tell me about like, what it was like growing up in India and so on. Did you was it a lot of fun? How many, do you have any brothers and sisters, first of all? And, what was your village like?
So I was actually raised in Delhi, which is the capital of India. And I grew up in something called a cantonment. So it is this small bubble that all the army kids and their families live. So everyone around me, their parents were in the army. Right. And back in those days, we had multiple wars. So we had the 1999 war with Pakistan, and all of our parents had gone, like, when I say all of our parents, I mean our fathers were at the war. And I remember very vividly that we used to get this notice, right outside a house, which would say, who has died.
Oh gosh.
And that used to be the 4 o'clock. And all the mothers would go and see, if their husband's name is there.
Right.
So we were predominantly raised by the mothers, right? But these, like, an army wife is stronger than an army officer, because she always has this mindset that maybe my husband might not survive, but I have to raise these kids and have to be very strong to do that.
So she takes on both roles immediately.
She is, she's the father, she's the mother, and, she has to take care of the 2 kids, and she also probably has her own job. Right. Which she is doing. So my mother used to teach. So she was a teacher, and she used to teach political science to kids, in 11th and 12th. These are kids who are like 16, 17 years old in our curriculum. And but I think beyond the toughness of being an army kid, I think my childhood was amazing. Yeah. Like it was a lot of discipline. It wasn't an environment where you could be mischievous.
Really?
Yes. Like I had a very military upbringing in the sense that you get up at 7 o'clock. Sorry, not 7 now, like 7 now, but like back in those days, like, by 5:30 you have to get up, you have to get ready, you have to go to the school, you have to do your blah blah blah. And
was it a military school as well, or was it like
no, it wasn't a military school, but I went to a convent school.
All right.
They have schools across, like they have schools in the UK, but it's an all-girls school, and it was a very strict school to be a part of. Like, there was a lot of discipline, was like on the top. You have to
and
be,
how, like, what age did you join that school? Was it like about 5,
so
6?
I think I was 6 or 7 years old.
Right. And up until when did you stay there?
All my life. So all my schooling happened there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
you went to
Undergrad.
To undergrad. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
right. So your experience of like the rest of the world would have been just confined to there, and then all of a sudden it's just woof.
Yes. When I came to London, I didn't know how to cross the roads. So I used to see other people, and then, and I would not advise anyone to do this, but I would see when people are like crossing, I would cross with them. And because I didn't know that, you had to cross a certain way. And also because you stayed in cantonment, you didn't interact with people who were non-army.
Oh, right.
So I thought everyone's parents were in the army, and that's what you had to do. So I didn't know people whose parents were not in the army.
Got it.
So even in India, I was in a small bubble.
In your own kind of thing. Oh.
And the way, I think I'm really glad my mother did that, but she kind of packed our entire day. So post school, you had, this class, you had the other class, and then you had to go for your maths tuitions, and then you had to go for another tuitions, and you had so many extra classes that you had packed that you just didn't have time to think about anything.
Yeah.
So while the world was on like Facebook and they were on these social media apps, and I had nothing. I didn't have a phone till I was 18 years old.
Wow.
And I'm not that old, so I
Yeah.
could have a phone. But the way I was brought up was very much, very focused. You had no aspect of distraction, and it was
Yeah.
very, very military. So I felt like while my dad was serving the army, my mom was picking and learning all of those things and like putting it on us to make sure we were very skilled.
Right.
So I have a brother. He's elder to me, and he's done really well for himself. He's responsible for setting up borders, across India. So the Indian-China border needs to have connectivity.
Yeah.
So he's responsible for setting up flyovers, making sure the road is in the right, is perfect to be traveling on.
Sure.
And also these borders are very sensitive because,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
almost always so much tension between them. There's
Yeah.
landslide, the weather is really bad.
Yeah.
So how do you actually be able to actually take a team forward and create that connectivity at these extreme borders?
Mhm.
So he's doing that. And while he couldn't join the army, he's still kind of contributing to the country in his way and form.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I see. So yeah, you first of all, I find it absolutely fascinating that you've been brought up in an all girls. Was it a convent school? Did you say, right?
Yeah.
All girls convent school in India, and presumably it was a Catholic school. Was
Yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So your educational background would have been there would have been probably like lots of Christianity and so on.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my, wow. So how did that kind of square away with the predominance of like, obviously Hinduism being the majority kind of religion in India? It's like, how does that work with you? Or, I don't want you to tell me which religion you are or whatever.
So I'm
but
Hindu. I can
Yeah.
say that.
But
The country I saw, we never saw religion as a distinction, and I think that's also a very something I saw in army, right? Like when you join, when you join the Indian Army or any of the services, when you enter that service, you're not known by your religion, but you're known by a soldier. And it's about what you do for your country.
right.
So in my household, when my dad's friends came, they all came from like different backgrounds, different religion, but they were all the same for us. And we never saw that distinction between whether you were a certain religion or not. I think now in the ecosystem that, the world is evolving, and the prevalence of religion is quite significant. But that was not the country that we grew up in. It was, it was pretty much,
Was milder.
it was like something on your passport, right? You
Yeah.
write because, you have to write that. But
Right.
but we celebrated all festivals. Like
Yeah.
in India, you have more public holidays than you actually work, because there are so many festivals to celebrate, and there's so many different gods, and there's so many celebrations, and so many different cultures and religions staying together.
Yeah,
and
like
I think
Lori was just recently, right?
yes,
So-
exactly. And Lori is different from what I would celebrate, but I would still celebrate it because that's just how you've grown up being.
Yeah.
So I think when you're interacting with someone, it's regardless of what religion you are. I think everyone's the same, and that's the way I've been brought up.
Yeah. So definitely, I think your upbringing has been very unconventional. I wouldn't say it would have been the norm for the majority of the Indian population. It's unique.
Yeah.
And I can understand now why you're so high performing, and I can see like all of the trajectory and the things that have happened. Yeah. Very interesting, Malika.
No, I mean, I think my mother says this, and I would like to say this to everyone, because a lot of my friends circle now they're at the phase where they're starting their own company, or they have big milestones coming in their life, in their corporate culture, in their corporate life, or in entrepreneurship. And I think it's never about can you do it. I think it's about you don't have an option. You have to do it. Right.
The survival aspect.
And that is quite important to inbuild in yourself, because you actually don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the way things are changing. So people's mindset is a lot different because of the amount of information they all have now. Right. So you're thinking a lot about what's happening in the world, which is important because it creates awareness. But at the same time, it's really taking a toll on people's mental health.
I was going to say that. Because, like you were just constantly in a state of anxious awareness, should we say, of what's going on. Your phone buzzes as a notification from the news that says, this has happened over here, or this has happened over there. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking about it. But then all of a sudden, you got something just popped up on your email that says, where's this report, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, then you've got anxiousness number 2 happening.
Yeah, I would just recommend, don't put all the apps on your phone. That'll really
from a tech person.
And I would say that you don't need to know everything that's happening in the world. Be kind to yourself. And for anyone who's starting a career or who wants to start their own company, the only advice I have is you don't have an option to quit. It'll be the hardest journey of your life, whether you're starting a corporate culture, you're moving to another country, or you're starting on your own company. It's going to be extremely hard. But you have an option to quit or not quit, and you have to train your mind to not quit. If you can train and control your mind to do things that should be done, it will be at the path that you want to walk on, rather than the path which is the path where things are hard, and how difficult it is. There are going to be so many problems. But if you can train your mind to be saying, regardless of what the problem is, this is what we have to do, and we're going to go forward with it, you will be fine. And I think eventually it comes down to your support system, right? This is not a tech advice, but choosing your right partner is the most important thing in your life. I mean, it's more important than the career you choose. If you have the right partner, the right husband or wife, and the right support system with you, and who believe in what you want to do. So now, instead of one person working on a goal, you have 2 people working on one goal. Now you're a team. And that helps you to actually move things faster and better and get you a different perspective, which is quite important for you. So finding a right partner is the only advice that I give to any young person. So if you can find the right person, you've won half the battle of your life.
Won the best battle of your life, right?
The best battle.
Very good. No, it's all very interesting, I think. And I'm not sure whether I heard it on the radio or I might have heard it in a song or something today, but it was a line that said, the only person who can make the choice of what's happening in your life is you, really, because yes, crap will happen, but it's the way how you react to it is your choice still. So it doesn't matter. You could have had the worst life ever, but just your ability to react,
Yeah.
or your response, the way you shape your response to it, is only you, is
Yeah.
only down to you. That thing can't make you respond in a certain way.
Yeah, because there's so much you can blame on. That person tricked me.
Yeah.
Or this is not working against,
I lost
working
this
in
much
my
money.
favor.
Yeah.
There's so much at stake, but eventually, what you can control is yourself, your actions, and your effort.
Mhm.
If you can control these three things, you will be in control of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that gives me a lot of comfort, because you can always trick yourself into thinking, 7 other things and procrastinate and actually not do anything about the situation.
Yeah.
But the moment you comfort yourself and give yourself that love and comfort that eventually it's in your control and this is what you can do, things will move faster. And there will be things that are not in your control, but can you do anything about it? No.
Yeah.
So rather focus on stuff that you actually can control.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you have given yourself on a flight over here when you were like 2018, 2017 time? What would you have said? Like, imagine you're sat right next to you on the plane.
Yeah, that was a very interesting flight. I still remember, but I'll not get into those details.
All right. Yeah.
I think I would just tell myself to not be patient, and I know that's a very different advice from what you would have expected, because I was in this constant kind of stride of proving myself to a certain section of my family that was like, why are you spending all of this money and sending her abroad?
Oh, really? Wow.
So like that is one aspect. So this aspect of I actually want to prove myself and I want to do better.
Yeah.
And being able to take that energy which I took when I left India and turn that into motivation, and being very persistent about that helped me, because everything that that happens when you're a student, and especially you have visa restrictions and cultural restrictions and all of that, everything's going against you in those you don't have money, it's just such a hard country to live in. It's so cold. It's you're not able to interact with students because they don't know your language. English is not my first language, so you're kind of struggling at all aspects.
Oh, wow.
But being able to kind of drive yourself and remind yourself, why did I come here? What do I want to achieve? And being very clear about the fact that we knew it's not going to be easy. We knew it was very hard, but we're here now. So either we can, have a great 9 months and go back to the country, or we're going to really turn this around and make it our own.
All
And
right.
having that mindset was one that I adopted and I built. And it was
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
But, did I have an option? No.
No.
So being able to be very clear on why you're here, what do
Yeah.
you want to achieve, and what is driving you. And if that drive is being able to prove yourself, it's fine. If that is what drives you, if money drives you, and if that's the reason why you want to build an entrepreneurship career, if you want to do that tech job because money is important, be clear about it. You don't have to have a purpose that I want to change the world and that is the reason why I'm going to work hard. If it's about finding and providing a better life for you and your family, and that is your motivation, be clear about that.
Yeah.
And be clear about that to everyone who you work with.
Yeah.
Because the moment you're clear with your intentions, you're a step closer to it.
Absolutely.
So
being open and honest with yourself, for starters.
is
Don't
key.
believe your own bullshit that you're telling yourself, right?
Yeah.
Say, what am I doing this for? Right? I can imagine, actually, because I see you on the plane sat right next to you just before the doors are about to close, and you're kind
Yeah.
of just saying, yeah. But maybe also are you saying to yourself, look, you're just going to have to go through this.
Yeah.
Because if you don't go through it, you will never learn that you're going to have to tell yourself this
Yeah.
in how many years? I can't do the quick maths, but you
Yeah.
should be able to, right? From 18 to 2024, you're going to have to learn this in that time period.
Yeah, and also don't give yourself too much importance. Like there are 20,000 people who come to this country every every single day. So you're not building something that no one's done. This path has been walked by multiple people. So don't give yourself too much importance. You have to work hard.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to do 50 things to make this happen, but you have to do it. It's all about getting the work done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That was the same thing Indira said as well, like when her mom said, go get the milk, right? Go get the milk.
Yeah. Simple.
Yeah, exactly. You're not the CEO of Pepsi, right?
Exactly.
Go get the milk. So thank you so much for your time today, Malika. I've personally really, really enjoyed hearing about your story and finding out so much more about you as a person, and understanding that the journey that you've been on has been through had so many different twists and turns to it, but also, the unconventionalness of who you are. And yes, I definitely think that you're probably the most unique guest that I've had in terms of a background on our show so far. So just thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much. I mean, for me it was a very authentic conversation, and I'm hopeful that anyone who's watching this podcast would find a lot of value in the journey and the authenticity and the vulnerability that I've shared with you today.
Oh, well, we're so pleased that you're here today. So if you'd like to find out more information about Malika, then you can check her out on your LinkedIn. And also, I'm guessing, are there anything about the school as well, Malika, that you wanted to point out?
Yeah, so we have the foundation is called olivegreen.com. So you can find more information about that. But you can also read about it on my website. It's called www.malikamalik.com.
Brilliant. And of course, Google also needs no introduction anyway, so you can go check out what they're doing with generative AI. And finally, if you're looking for any further information about what happens in the world of work and all of the experts that we have, our podcast series is available online on YouTube. Just go check it out. You'll find out lots more information about people in business and people just doing great things in industry right now. So check it out. See you later. Bye.